Welcome to Ask Charlotte, part of the Feel Better podcast. If you've ever wanted a therapist to just come out and tell you how to get through something tough, I'm your girl. For over 20 years, I've helped women navigating parenting, work pressures, relationship struggles, and trying to be a good human through it all. This is the space where you bring what's going on in your lives and I help you find a way forward. If you'd like to send me a question, you can do so anytime at charlottecummings.nz. Let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of Ask Charlotte. Let's get into this week's listener question.
I want to do a better job of looking after myself, but I hate routine. What do I do?
Actually, this is something that I've talked with a few clients about recently too. So what do you do when you want to look after yourself better, but actually you don't like routine? Now, there are some reasons why routine can be tougher for some people than for others. That might be that you're neurodivergent and that actually routine is something that is tricky to stick to in some areas of life, where life kind of runs with passions or fixations, and sticking to a schedule sometimes is something people who are neurodivergent love, and sometimes it isn't. Can also be that just personality-wise, you don't love routine, or lifestyle-wise, it's hard to stick to a routine because of things like shift work, family dynamics, different things that you're juggling that make a consistent routine tough. So I think the starting place here is recognizing that you don't have to be someone who loves routine, discipline, ultra consistency to be someone who looks after themselves well and moves towards those goals. Now, I think there are lots of areas when it comes to looking after ourselves where consistency does really matter. We don't get those kind of gains or wins without having some kind of consistency to what we are doing. But what I want to hold up here for you to think about is that consistently doing something is really the goal here. Maybe consistently doing the same things over and over doesn't work for you, but consistently doing some things, picking from a bit of a menu, doing something where you are showing up for yourself is what really matters. So there can be variation to what you're doing, but doing something on a regular basis is the key thing to start shifting your mind around. It doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have to be rinse and repeat. There can be variety that keeps you engaged. It can look different in different weeks. The key thing here is showing up for yourself. I've also worked with a lot of people in this space where there's actually quite a bit of judgment on themselves about not being someone who likes consistency. So they look at other people's routines, their 5 a.m. wake-ups, their early morning workouts, and think, wow, I can't do that. I'm a worse human than they are, and that is quite simply just not true. My strong encouragement to you here is don't judge yourself. Free yourself from that. And get back to thinking about this has got nothing to do with my value. This is all about working out what works for me, and that is completely okay. Now, people who don't love consistency often do better with approaching things in bursts. So we want to think about working with that tendency towards doing things in a burst of activity or following something that might be a little bit of a hyperfixation or flavor of the month for a while. Now, my spoiler here is I hate consistency. There are very few things that I do on a consistent basis, and I've learned to work with myself around this. So I've learned to follow my hyperfixations for a period of time. I'm going to give you a little example of that. Something I'm doing at the moment is RPM biking classes at the gym. I'm really enjoying them at the moment, but I'm going into that knowing that that enjoyment is actually going to come to an end. I'm loving it. I'm happy to do a few classes a week at the moment, but I know that over time, I'm not going to enjoy this so much, and I'm going to need to mix up what it is that I'm doing. So I will stay in tune with how long I'm going to let this run for. When I stop enjoying RPM, I will challenge myself to think about what am I going to do now? What am I going to switch that out with? So the key thing being giving yourself permission to stop one thing, but challenging yourself to start something else that works with your goals around looking after yourself. There can be other ways to manage that too. Like you might think, I'm going to do 20 of these classes and then see how I feel after that. Picking a number or a time frame can be really helpful here. I've also worked with clients where we've approached things in blocks of time, like what is the plan for this week or this month? Getting out of thinking that we're going to set something up where we're expecting ourselves to follow through with it for an entire year, knowing that we are going to fail at that. Your routines don't have to be things that you stick with forever from the time that you set them up. You can move and adapt them over time. I once lived with a flatmate who was the absolute master of consistency. They ate the same breakfast every day. They took the same lunch to work. They woke at exactly the same time. They had a gym routine that was consistent. And my life and theirs couldn't have looked any more different. But we both loved the way that we managed our lives, and it worked for us. So know that there are those people who lock in and do something the same forever and actually struggle to change or adapt to the new things. And there are other people who are wired in a way where that variety is actually the spice of their life, and they enjoy running things based on their interests, based on their energy, and following that through. This can be where it's really helpful to introduce something like themes. So thinking about what it is that you will do this month, or a particular focus that you're wanting to bring your attention to. I also have a little routine that I've talked about on the podcast before, where I simply ask myself on a Sunday night what my well-being goals are for the week ahead. That works so much better for me than being locked into a particular way of being. Now, an extension on that is I've had clients who've also really enjoyed making a list the night before for the next day. So thinking about how that day went, how you're feeling, what it is that you're noticing, and what you might need the next day, and approaching things on a day-by-day basis. Sometimes it can be helpful to introduce a little bit of structure around that though. So something like using the notes on your phone to make a plan. What am I doing tomorrow to look after myself? Where are the blocks for me within the day? Also, I've found for lots of clients, particularly who are neurodiverse, it is challenging to think about starting something. So sometimes our mental barrier is more around procrastinating, getting going, than it is actually doing the thing. Now, something that can be helpful to do here is to use timers, or to commit to yourself that you're going to do something for 5 or 10 minutes and then see how you feel. I know that if I say to myself, I'm just going to get out there for a run and I'm going to be able to turn around in 5 minutes' time if I'm not enjoying it, is enough to help me follow through with doing the thing that I'm not feeling like doing. The odds are that most of the time I actually think, oh no, now that I'm out here, I'm really enjoying this and I'll keep going. But I do know that I can let myself off the hook there. If that day the run's just 10 minutes, 5 minutes out and back, that is totally fine too. Sometimes why we find it difficult to start things is we don't give ourselves permission to move the goalposts and not completely follow through with it to some kind of perfect or ideal standard. So yes, maybe you do ideally want to go for a 40-minute run that day, but maybe the barrier is setting yourself up for all or nothing instead of setting yourself up that a little bit is okay too. Now, I think here's something we can tell ourselves is, I'm a person who looks after myself. Instead of getting into this binary thinking around, I'm not a person who's good at routine, and there are other people who are good at routine and consistency. Let's drop that as a metric of how good you can be at looking after yourself and pursuing your own self-care and well-being goals. Instead, I'd be encouraging you to think about this identity of showing up for yourself, of I'm a person who takes good care of myself, because it's not essential that you love consistency and routine in order to be someone who is good at looking after themselves. It can also be helpful to think about rewards. Now, I know that some people go, oh, isn't that a little bit babyish? But some people are more motivated when there is something in it for them. Now, if you need a sticker chart, be my guest. If you need a list that you can tick off or some kind of app that tracks your progress, think about utilizing rewards or progress tracking in a way that works for you and keeps you feeling encouraged and motivated. It might be that when I've done this a certain number of times, I'm going to reward myself with this. Or when I've done this a certain number of times, then I'm going to have a bit of a review. But think about those finite commitments and the rewards you can give yourself along the way. Some people are also more social when it comes to being consistent. Often, if we're asking people for consistency, we're kind of defaulting to asking them for a solo effort. So maybe one of the things to troubleshoot around here is perhaps you are good at consistency if it's in a social context, i.e., you might be better at showing up for a group fitness class or some kind of boot camp or some kind of self-care activity like a meditation class. You're not great at doing any of those things on your own, but you are good at doing them in a social context if you've got a commitment to something on a particular day, at a particular time, and with other people. This is all about working out what works for you. A key reframe, though, when it comes to looking after yourself is thinking about caring for yourself as being oxygen and not obligation. I know a lot of people have found their commitments to themselves a lot easier to keep when they see them as essential things that really help them keep going, rather than being must-dos, should-dos, you're a bad person if you don't do these things, items on their calendar. So think about what you're doing to look after yourself as oxygen, as something that keeps you going, that is vital and important to your survival. Also, when I've worked with people who haven't loved consistency, they tend to do really well with a menu. So a list of really great activities and things that they can move towards from a self-care or well-being perspective that they can choose from. So they don't have decision-making fatigue. So anything off that list is considered a great thing to do. But think about the barriers when it comes to what it is you're avoiding doing, and if you need to make some of those things easier to do within your day. Now, my unpopular opinion here is people who are good at consistency are not better than people who are bad at consistency. I see many people berate themselves because they can't do the 5 a.m. routine all the time. They can't keep that up for the rest of their lifetime. They can't look after themselves in the same way that other people do. Well, the spoiler here is that you can find ways to look after yourself that work for you. The consistent girlies are no better than those who need to run with a menu at a whim, following their energy and their hyperfixations. You can be good at looking after yourself too. Well, I hope that this episode has given you a number of ideas and strategies if you're someone who doesn't love routine, but still wants to work on looking after themselves. There are lots of hacks, things that you can try, and ways to get through this. But being consistent isn't the only way to be good at looking after yourself. Give yourself permission, let yourself off the hook, and finally work out what works for you. Thanks so much for joining me. If you appreciated today's episode, I'd love you to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share this episode with someone else who might need it too. I know life's tough, so don't forget to ask for advice when you need it. See you next time for Ask Charlotte.